Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook, so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one size fits all protocols, just real answers, deep rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. And good afternoon, Vanessa.
Hello, hello.
So happy you're here, and I think we're just going to have an incredible conversation. We could talk about so many things on this podcast, but I did want to briefly introduce Vanessa, who is the CEO and head coach of Vital Spark Coaching, which is a functional women's health coaching company. They work with so many incredible people on, or women, I should say, on their metabolisms and hormones and gut health and things you hear a lot about on the show. So I think Vanessa is not only going to bring great value on her story and how she helps women, but also just a very unique perspective on what has made her really successful in this. So, Vanessa, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to come on, and I know we've known each other for several years now. It's something we've always connected on in our personal conversations too, of a lot of similarities in our stories at times. And I was thinking back earlier when preparing for this podcast of, one of the last times we had talked was at an event, and I remember I was getting ready to speak, and you were like, "Oh, I made sure that we got the gluten-free stuff here," and it was something like you and I could always connect on of like we're the functional health type of girlies here. So it's exciting to be able to hop on the podcast and talk a little bit more with you.
Yeah, it's so funny in the virtual world. It's like that was, oh my gosh, I mean, that was pre my kid. Like, it's like it's so much of life has changed since then for both of us, and that could be something we chat about too, is evolution in this health and journey. But first, give us a little bit more info on who you are and how you really got started in this line of work.
Yeah, gosh. So I really got into online coaching initially more in like the traditional nutrition and fitness coach, and just doling out macros, workouts, really just wanting to help women with the basics of losing weight, feeling fitter, feeling healthier. So when I first kind of got into the space in 2019, I was just your normal online fitness coach. I had gone through more of a basic weight loss journey prior to that. I'd always been really interested in health and fitness. I, had participated in different types of sports and things growing up, and I had struggled with my weight. So going through my own health journey, I just found myself at this point of wanting to teach other women about the basics of health and fitness and about tracking macros and all these things that had been so transformative for me. But in those, first early years of my online coaching business, and it had been, thankfully doing really well. And with that, our business had been growing pretty rapidly. And being in your mid 20s with a rapidly growing business, learning how to run a business, I realized in that time frame that there was something I did not know how to do, and that was how to manage my mind, manage my emotions, manage stress. And as I know you're very much familiar with, Shannon, if you do not manage your stress effectively, your body will take a toll. And so I was essentially forced to eventually learn more about hormone health and gut health and the different intricacies of the female body and how all these different systems of the body can be affected when our bodies are really stressed, when our minds are really stressed, and when we're not managing our minds and managing our emotions. And so that's where I found myself behind the scenes, of course, running this, what was perceived to be this successful online coaching business, helping women lose weight while I had been just rapidly gaining weight, feeling awful in my body, energy tanked, emotions all over the place, felt like horrible mood swings all the time, just really not feeling like myself at all for a while. Of course, not to even get into like the not so fun stuff to talk about of like the gut issues and like a lot of other symptom flare-ups that I was dealing with. I found myself at this point just feeling like a total imposter syndrome, no idea of like, how can I even show up online or show up to my clients and tell them I can help them lose weight when I feel like I have no idea what's going on in my body right now. I can't lose weight. I'm gaining weight. And that's what led me down the path of functional health, purely from this place of necessity of me looking for answers for myself, trying to find kind of my own truth in like, how can I help myself here? How can I just help myself feel better? And that's what put me down the path of completely transforming my health, really discovering this whole new path that I had opened my eyes to at that point of learning about the functional side of health, so much more than macros, so much more than workouts. And that was really what led me to expanding my company and actually really shifting our focus to be more functional health focused. And so that's where we are today. That was the last few years. That was about 2 to 3 years ago that we really heavily made that shift. And today, that's where my expertise is more in the functional health now, very similar to you, Shannon, and something, again, we love to jam on these types of things. But that's where we can get into whatever aspects you want to talk about with that, but those are my passions, is really the mindset, the functional, tying it all together and helping women get to the bottom of their health issues, the bottom of their symptoms, really uncover what is keeping them from being where they want to be by taking more of that internal approach, both from what's going on in our mind, what's going on between our ears, and what's going on in the different organ systems in our body.
And I mean, you and I share such a similar story. I know I've made a bit of a pivot into bioenergetics in the last few years. You've made that pivot to really hone in on the functional world. And it's just, gosh, when you come from this world of just macros and workouts, you just are like, oh my God, I was missing so much of like who we are. And just
Mhm.
like, not only from a health perspective, from a mental health perspective on who we are on
Absolutely.
this journey. And that's cool. We both had success with losing weight and cool, looking muscular, whatever. And that was just so much, just one small piece of the puzzle, And I think one thing I love that you shared too is, I mean, I think during your this period for you was when I think I last saw you, and it was
Mhm.
like to very openly go through this when you're in this online business takes a toll on you, right? And I think people think as health and fitness coaches, we're immune to this kind of work. We're not. Sometimes we're the people that need it the most because we're dealing with a lot of high stress and, that can absolutely tank our bodies. And so I'd love to understand a little bit more on your journey, the role that stress really played on your body, and how you overcame it, not just from a, functional perspective, but also just from a psychological perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anybody who's listening who maybe is an entrepreneur or works in a small business where you're very much in the business, it's hard. It is hard, and it's a wonderful, just beautiful thing getting to run a business, getting to work in a small business, whatever kind of aspect you are within that. But it is undeniably really challenging. It's a lot different than like a cushy 9 to 5 job, and the impact that we get to make at our company, that I know you get to make at your company, Shannon, like the level of impact we get to make, it comes at the cost of us really caring and us having to work really hard in order to deliver the quality of service that we want to be delivering our clients, right? And so like I mentioned earlier, in those kind of early years, things were really starting to take off for our company. I had to learn through trial and error. And for anybody who's familiar with Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 9. I'm very much a like peacekeeper. I just want there to be, peace and harmony, and I just want to make everybody's life smooth and easy and wonderful. And while this can be a great asset as a leader in a business in a lot of ways, it can also, if not managed well, and if not, managing your mindset well, it can completely be your downfall. Because what happens is you will ride the roller coaster of emotions of when things are going well, you're feeling good, life is good. But when things are hard, if there's a challenge in something with a team member, with a client, anything that feels like it's kind of disrupting that peace and harmony, you're worried about how someone is perceiving you, whatever that is, it would completely take this toll on my body to where I'm sure you've probably talked about with your audience before, of like that fight or flight aspect that you get into where your body doesn't know the difference between, are you stressed because somebody said in a Slack message that you're not really sure what the tone is of that message and you're wondering if they're mad at you, or are you stressed because you're running from a tiger for your life? Your body doesn't know the difference, and you're going to have a lot of that same physiological reaction. And so with that, before I was educated on these things, I didn't know that this is where education is such power, right? I didn't know really what the toll was taking on my body. I think there was that part of me wearing like busy as a badge of honor, wearing stress as this like, man, I worked so hard, I'm so stressed all the time, just like really sitting in that place and not even wanting to pull myself out of that place of stress. And with that, day after day, just driving my body into the ground with just this constant stress, my body never feeling safe. When your body's not feeling safe, it's going to take a toll on all the different aspects. I ultimately found myself at a place where my adrenals were completely tanked. My cortisol was flatlined. I was just a completely like my body was shuttling everything into cortisone, like hard preference for cortisone. I was at a place where my gut was an absolute mess, like really bad dysbiosis in every aspect. I was just visibly inflamed. And I was walking around as this just like inflamed, stressed, honestly, almost even at a point of like angry person who's just not my personality at all.
Yeah.
And my poor now husband, he was my boyfriend and then fiance at the time. And that year that we got engaged and married was truly the hardest year of our relationship because I was just like this constant ticking time bomb of emotions, just all the time feeling exhausted and then feeling just frustrated, all the things. And that's where, there was a event that I'm not sure, were you at the event in December of 2022, the bigger one in Arizona?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so there was a conference for listeners. There was a conference with kind of our previous mentors that we both worked together in. There was an event in painting the picture for you, Arizona, December 2022. So this was like the tail end of that year, and I had really been starting to work on my health and seeing some improvements, but I still was not all the way there. And the reality is, the missing piece for me was I was not managing my emotions. I was taking the supplements, I was following the protocol, I was eating the foods, doing the things, but I was not doing the hardest piece of the work of actually focusing on what's going on in my mind. What are my thought patterns? What am I thinking? And how is that affecting my day to day? Like, what is my perspective on what's happening around me? And with that, um, as I mentioned, we were engaged, my now husband and I, and in this process of planning a wedding that I wanted to keep really small, he wanted to be a little bit bigger, and like I was just kind of like checked out of like, you know what, I just don't even care. I want to be married to you. I don't care about this freaking wedding. And it honestly just became this bigger stressor than it needed to be. And so we got married in November of 2022. And then a few weeks later, we had this event in December. And I had a little bit of a breakdown at this event. I was asked to speak on a panel on the stage. This was a pretty large event. There was about 400 people that worked in, predominantly online health and fitness coaching. And here I was in this big room, all these people sitting there, going to walk up on stage and sit in front of this room. And I was the heaviest I have been since my early 20s when I first went through a weight loss journey. Not only was I heaviest on the scale, but I also looked puffier than I've ever been. Truly, just I was embarrassed. I was like, gosh, how am I supposed to go up here and be this like expert person and be speaking on this panel of experts when I feel just ashamed of kind of where I'm at? Like, here, my mind is going crazy. Like, what are people thinking of me? They're probably judging me. And I remember that morning just like really being in a place of almost a little bit of a mental breakdown. And so that was a huge shift, a huge turning point for me of realizing like I need more help than this. And I had already been working with a mindset coach since a few months prior, but like that's where I really started to take it seriously, dive into that and do that deeper work with the healing process.
Yeah, actually, I think I was there because I think I was talking to one of your old coaches at the time, and she was talking about
Mm,
this journey. I think you had maybe just done a Dutch or something like that. And, we're talking about just coaches and adrenal burnout and how just common it is. And, I think that's one thing to be like, who am I to tell people? And it's like now what's beautiful because it's your deeper story, right? It's all led
mhm.
you to literally where you are now. But um, I think sometimes in a lot of our clients' journeys, it's a journey and we don't realize like, hey, what is this teaching us, right? Like
Yeah.
this is telling us this isn't that your body's broken. It's not that things are wrong. We are not, we just need to understand that these are signals that something deeper is going on. We have to explore. And so often, and I'd love to hear your insight on this, it's easy to beat yourself up all right. Tell yourself how
Mhm.
much you like yourself, or, this is just the way you're going to be. That's a big one, right? I'm just a tired, inflamed, crabby woman. That's just who I am. I always have terrible PMS. I'm just kind of, I have these more crabby tendencies. That doesn't have to be who you are. Why are they happening? So I'd love to see, or I'd love to hear a little bit more. We can go into the hormone side of things, what you did as well, but you mentioned mindset, and I know the mindset coach you're talking about because I adore her and she does good work, but what were the biggest shifts that you had to make that were not necessarily fun and sexy, to really change your body and your mind?
Yeah, really, really great question. So it's exactly what you said. It's not the sexy work. It's not the work that people want to do. And I'll see this, well, I'll have this conversation with, my clients all the time of the results that you want to see are on the other side of you kind of releasing attachment to the results and the outcome a little bit, right? And what you mentioned there a little bit, I want to hit on too, the identity piece of this, to where our words are so powerful. And when I say our words, it's both like the language we're speaking externally, and this could be like in casual conversation with girlfriends of just like casually, making comments about ourselves, our body, different things like that. It could be also just like that track running in our minds. And I think that's the more important piece of it. That's just these unregulated thoughts just running wild in our minds all day long. We have 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And of those thoughts, if you're not even paying attention to what that track is, probably a lot of them are predominantly negative. A lot of them are from this inherent place where your brain wants to protect you. And in doing so, it's constantly looking for threats. It's looking for, that could be like social threats in terms of like, how am I perceived? What are people thinking of me? And we can do everything that we possibly can to try and put ourselves in this like cushy environment, take care of ourselves in the sense of like controlling, like, okay, I'm gonna do everything I can to not rattle my emotions. But we live in a world where things are gonna happen. There will always be things outside of your control. And one of those things could be that your body is changing in a certain way, or your body has been kind of, stuck in a certain way. And now you're starting to create this identity from it because you're having these thoughts of, well, like you mentioned, I'm just, I'm moody and like that's just the way I am. And I just am always this kind of like negative person, and start to say these like I am statements as opposed to just like that's something I'm dealing with right now. It's something I'm experiencing right now. It's a feeling I'm experiencing right now. So all of that to say, a big part of the journey for me was really starting with just awareness. We can't change something if we don't know what it is. And so really starting to, I had, journaled in the past, but starting to bring a little bit more of a practice and a routine of purely just doing what I call a thought download, just writing out, like listing out what are the thoughts kind of like just running over and over again in my brain right now. What are the things that are on my mind, as well as then noticing what emotions are coming from these thoughts. Because I do believe that your feelings, your emotions are created by your thoughts. They don't just kind of pop up out of nowhere. It could be from like these deeper subconscious thoughts that are harder to target, but all the things that we're feeling are created by our thoughts at some point. So if we can just start by just building awareness of what are my thoughts, what are the emotions and feelings that are, coming from these thoughts, and then we can also even separate it out if we want to go that step further of what are like the actual facts. What are the factual circumstances of this? By purely just separating those three things out, you would be shocked at how much, and I say this from a place of like having been there over and over again, how much we blend it all together naturally in our brains where we're just like, we think this factual circumstance and our thoughts are the same thing. And so what I mean by that is like that's where perspective starts to come in of now we take on this perspective and this belief gets formed that things just are this way. I just am this way, all of that. When really the reality is there's a circumstance that is factually true that it like cannot be argued. Like it is a fact that today is a Tuesday. That is a fact. It is not a fact that today is a hard day. That is my perspective. That is my thought on it. That is like the thought that I'm taking on. But if I choose to say that today is Tuesday and today is a hard day, then I'm probably going to feel pretty stressed. I'm probably going to feel pretty bad from that, as opposed to if I'm just like, yeah, today is a Tuesday and some other facts are, maybe it's this happened and that happened and different things, but like I can choose whether I see those things as hard or I can see those things as maybe growth opportunities. Maybe there are things I'm like, wow, this was something I had prayed for in the past to be dealing with this type of struggle. Like how grateful am I to have this type of challenge today when in the past I would have loved to have had this challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, So powerful when you phrase it like that too, because we do not realize how much it happens. And when you bring awareness to it, I'm sure people are blown away. They're like, oh my God, I didn't realize how negative I talk about myself,
Hmm.
how these are facts. I love sometimes challenging clients where they'll say something. I'm like, oh, is that true? What? Like, is that true? Is that a fact? They're like, well, no. Like, then why do you keep telling yourself day in and day out that you are this way, right? You can feel
Hmm.
this way. Feelings can change, but if you are something, you're putting that as, again, your identity, and that's setting it more in stone, and your brain will look for ways to make that true. And that's the crazy thing about our brains. And I'm sure you deal with this with clients too, where it's like, hey, let's talk about feelings or and they're like, but I want to lose 30 pounds. And I'm like, I understand, and it's like, this is the work that we don't talk about. You can do the protocols, you can do the hormone, supplements, you can do even the testing. I'm sure you see this a lot. It's like, okay, we've done the adrenal supplements, right? There's only so much cortisol manager we can throw at you before, your body's going to be like, I need more support. And I feel like that's usually the breaking point for some clients where they're like, okay, I guess the mindset work's pretty important. I'll start doing that now. I don't Do you find that a lot where it's like they want to do the sexy stuff first, right? They want to do the nutrition, the labs, the protocols. And the nervous system's like, yeah, 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 I'm not that stressed, right? I'll deal with it later, you know. And then when things don't work quite as maybe well or as quick as they want, again, they feel like my body's broken, something's wrong with me, right? And it's like, no, it's just we need to rewire these patterns. And I find that's harder. I find that's some of the hardest work to do out of any of the food, exercise, nutrition, and nothing. It's what's up here.
100%. Yeah. And it's truly the separator, I think, from people who get good results, from people who get great results, and
Yep.
people who sustain the results versus people who end up right back in the same place over and over again. And I can speak from experience of like, I've had, recurring issues that I can say specifically of like, oh, I know that that came from this period where my stress was higher and I wasn't managing it that well. And I know that's what caused it. And I can take full responsibility for that. And that can motivate me to truly say, okay, how can I change here? What can I do better in this area? Um, Something I'll share with clients often too, especially for those clients who are a little bit more of like, oh, I don't want to do like the woo woo stuff. I don't want to talk about my emotions. Like, just like talk to me about the science here. I'm like, yeah, let's look at the science. Let's look at the research on this. You know what? There are multiple studies. This has been studied over and over again that a gratitude practice can actually reduce inflammatory markers. Just implementing a daily practice of writing down and actually noticing and like actually sitting with, I think it's important to specify too. It's not like a checklist of like, let me just like write these things down and move on with my day. Like actually feel gratitude and notice what am I grateful for every single day. Do that for, I believe, the studies were actually even as little as like 6 weeks. You can see a difference. This is the power here. It's not woo woo. It's not this like magic spell you're doing over yourself. It is actually a physiological change in the body of getting your nervous system into a place to where it can say, okay, I'm at peace. I am safe. Just like I said in the beginning of this podcast, I am Enneagram 9. I by nature seek out that feeling of peace. I can't expect my external environment to deliver that for me. I can only deliver that to myself. And that comes down to the way I think about things. And that's how I can now, run a company that is 4 times the size of the company that I was running at the time that I completely tanked my hormones. And I'm in a great place now because my practices of how I take care of myself are different. It doesn't, of course, like the nutrition, the supplements, all of that, huge important aspect of it. But it would not be where I am if I wasn't doing the mindset practices and not just like doing it one and done, move on, but doing it consistently and keep coming back to it.
The consistency. Yeah, I find that a lot of it's check it, check off the box. Okay, did my breath work. Done, did my journal, right? But I love what you said about the woo-woo too, especially, you know, I transitioned more from functional labs to bioenergetics, and that's
Mhm.
a lot of energy. And even though it's rooted in quantum physics, it's rooted in science. People are like, give me the science behind it. But I find so often when we're so logical, and I've had this problem, so logical, want just the analytics, it's like at some point, healing is so much bigger than that. And we just need to like find this kind of middle ground where it's not woo woo. It's okay. I love science, super logical, but it's like there's so much more to it than just the data that holds us back so much, I feel. Um, but I'm speaking from experience too before I got into this work. But I'd love to hear from your perspective about, you talk about this on social media about pulling back from a lot of your routine, exercise, nutrition. I think this is a huge common misconception when we hear about, oh, I gained this weight, then suddenly I lost it all. It's like, we don't think, oh, I did less to get there, right? Can you explain a little bit on kind of that hard part of the journey and what it really took for you to reverse, a lot of these adrenal dysfunction, hormone issues, etc.
Yeah, that's, one of the hardest things. I think when you are more of this like high performer type of personality, like, go, go, go type of person, is realizing that you can't just like do more to get yourself to heal. And it's like we want to be like, okay, what are the things I need to do? Like, tell me, like, I'll do this, I'll do, these workouts, I'll do all this, I'll do all the things, right? The reality is, it's like, let's actually do less. Let's be more particular with what things we're doing and see if like we're filling a bucket of like all the things we spend our day with. What are the things that are actually like adding stress? And of course, again, like perspective is important there, but like what are the things that can be stressful on the body? And that can be things like intense exercise, even just like a little bit, not even intense, but maybe some weightlifting can for some people be too intense at different phases of the journey. But like those can be stressors on the body. It's not a how do we think about it? That's a physiological, your body is adapting. That adaptation response is a form of stress on the body. The way that we're eating, a lot of women come to me are under eating. I'm sure you experience this too. And when we're not eating enough food, that is a form of stress on the body. And the irony is, like somebody like me, when I was in that place where I was starting to gain weight, I was starting to be like, oh, I don't like the way that my, body is heading. I feel like things aren't feeling right. My initial response as a health and fitness professional who helped women lose weight was, oh, let me cut my calories and exercise more. And that's what I did initially in 2021. When I saw these changes starting to happen in my body, I was like, all right, let me just do what has always, of course, worked in the past, what I've always been trained to do. Let me just increase my exercise activity and let me eat less. And that should work just fine. But the reality is, I actually gained more weight. And not like the weight was just such a small piece of the puzzle, because what actually happened is I felt awful. That's when my gut issues started to really flare up. That's when things became not just this like little annoyance of like, oh, I don't like how I feel with that. That was like now it's actually affecting my quality of life. I cannot even like run my business day to day with how I'm feeling right now. And that's where kind of going a little bit of a tangent here, but we often think, let me do the harder thing, let me do more, and let me push myself. Like we've been, maybe we come from like this generation of like boot camp cultures. I don't know, but it's like, you got to push yourself, pain is gain, right? And as women, that's not how it really works all the time. There's a time and a place to push yourself, and there's ways to push yourself that can be, obviously healthy and effective, especially in the right environment, taking care of yourself. But I would argue, and where I often share in a lot of my content, and it can frustrate a lot of the gym bros on social media. But I will talk often about how I actually had to step back from exercise for a period of time. And I often see this with clients too, that we have to actually pull back our exercise activity. That might mean just doing less. It might mean doing nothing at all and letting your body chill out and just focusing on relaxing, like outdoor walks, get in nature, don't be double tasking, answering voice memos, listening to a podcast. Listen to Shannon's podcast maybe, but do that at a separate time when you can relax. But we need to actually take space to just let your nervous system chill. Like take that just like deep breath. And we don't realize until you start to actively like plan that into your day, how little we actually do that as like adults in 2025.
No, literally. I remember one time somebody told me to meditate for an hour. It was my first mindset coach. I was like, an hour? It's like, I'll give you 5 minutes, sir. I was like, and that felt like a lot to me. And it's like, I think what people really have never felt, speaking from experience too, is what it feels like to actually relax, what it feels
Mhm.
like to not have your brain just, be in quotation meditation and just using it as a way to check off your to-do list, right? And it's like, we don't even know what that feels like because we never give ourselves the space to actually feel that because we think it's unproductive. We feel like we're lazy,
Mhm.
right? But that's when the body heals, is during that time. And so I love that you emphasize that because so much of what you just shared is what so many people struggle with, right? And they almost need the permission to do less.
Mhm.
And they do. So many people, one, it exposes their relationship with food and exercise. That's a big one. I
Yeah,
having some clients take a week off when they were sick, and there's like this huge fear. I'm like, okay, we need to explore this a little bit more, right? It challenges them to think about things differently, but then they see, oh, wow, my body can respond and it is safe and it can see the things that I'm talking about without driving it to the ground. Because chances are they probably weren't enjoying that anyways. And if they were, they might have just done that as a survival mechanism, saying they love it when that's just because that's the way they thought that they could only, either love themselves or see the results.
totally. Yeah, I struggled with that myself. I had to be told, like, hey, you've got to take a step back from this. And it is this like leap of faith, of trust, while also accepting that, hey, maybe I'll gain weight during this time period. I have to be okay with that. And I did. I did gain a little bit of weight during that time period. And the reality is my body needed that. My body needed that to feel safe, and I don't regret it. It was uncomfortable, yes, but there's a lot of good things that happen in discomfort, and there was a lot of growth in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas. And I do think that, then getting back to the place that I am today, and I say back to, really, I mean forward to like just this totally better place that I am, but getting to a place where, I'm not only like at that lean, type of body composition that I was at in a, prior to my hormone and gut issues really kind of flaring up, but from this place to where I don't have the attachment to that kind of body composition anymore. I know that I can actually feel happy with like myself and my worth and my value at different shapes and sizes because I proved that to myself. I was able to actually take that as an opportunity to do that deeper work that I didn't realize I needed to do until I was there. And that's where I think that's important work for all of us to do because I, of course, am a believer that like there's no shame in wanting to lose weight, wanting to, change your body composition by any means. And like that's something I help women do day in and day out. But in doing that work, I do talk about with women of you can't wait until you get there to start loving yourself. You have to love yourself to get there because otherwise you're gonna stay stuck. You can't, I personally believe you can't hate your body to getting lean. You can't hate yourself towards getting lean. And you can't just put off feeling happy until you reach a certain body composition. Otherwise, again, comes back to that conversation of our thoughts are going to be actually creating stress in the body. And that alone, the thoughts about how you look and what size clothes you're wearing, like, your shape of your body, like those thoughts alone can create so much stress in the body and can keep you stuck in that place because your body is stressed. It's throwing off all the different internal systems of the body, and that's going to keep you from losing weight. It's the irony of what so many women are dealing with.
Yes, yes. And I just love what you said. You can't hate yourself in doing this or wait till something happens. You have to love yourself in the process. It's okay to want to change and, appreciate all of the steps of the journey, even if they're hard sometimes, because they will be. But I feel like that's just a beautiful place to wrap up here. And I just absolutely love all of your insights and what you're doing with so many, gosh, thousands now of women. So if people wanted to connect with you and learn a little bit more about what you do, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. That's where I am most active at Vanessa G Fitness. Supposedly, I also have a TikTok that my assistant started at one point, but I have yet to actually download the TikTok app. So you can follow me there and my content will get reposted, but I have not yet quite figured out that app yet. Instagram is where I'm most active, and that's where I hang out. And feel free to shoot me a message. I love connecting with people.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom. Thank you, listeners, for being here. If you found this helpful, go share it with somebody. You probably know somebody that needs to hear this message. And definitely leave a review. It's always so helpful so we can reach so many more women as well. Thank you again, Vanessa, and we'll catch you guys on the next show.